Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan at SteelersDepot.com, the place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd at Season 9, Episode 36. And Dave, it's bye week. I assume you're sleeping late, getting massages, lounging by the outside pool.
I'm going to try to do all those things that you just said. Maybe even fit in a trip down to Fremont Street on Saturday. I want to buy some art to look at in my.
I want to buy some poker chips.
Yeah, that too. But I can't take my wife to do that though. Her fun about going in those casinos, is just walking around and me not spending money. She likes to watch me not spend money in casinos.
Right.
That's her biggest thing. She don't get that, but yeah, I want to buy some kind of like vintage picture to go of like downtown Vegas or something to go them off as something to look at and all. And I am going to try to sleep. I will probably try to sit out at the pool maybe once. I don't know if I'll get that done. And of course, sit out back. We bought a new fire pit. Probably roast a marshmallow or three or something back there on the back. But other than that, it's you know how it is. I stay as busy as possible and not as organized as possible.
Are you? Is there a pool at your house, and is it screened in or is it outside?
It's outside. I can throw a rock right out my front door and hit it.
Yeah, and there's no screening around it.
No screening, but there's a fence around it.
Yeah, you got to have a fence. That's pretty much the rule everywhere. And, because down in the South, you see some of these places, and I always find it kind of odd, but, sometimes the mosquitoes are a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. Well, if we get a mosquito out there, he's lost.
Yeah, that's the good
thing. That's the thing about that. Lord knows, where I'm from, they have they call them, I don't know, what do they call them, lanais or whatnot. But if you have the money, you can tell really, not only a lot of people have pools where I'm from, but you can really tell
where you're from or where you are.
Where I'm from, well, I mean, there are a lot of pools here. It's just you don't.
Nobody screens them in.
Right. They don't screen them in here, but they do down south, and that's mainly because of mosquitoes. That's for sure.
All right. So before we get into this, and it's probably a decent week for us to have a bye week because there's so much came out of that Steelers-Bengals game that we got enough. We can do another recap of that game and the things that happened on and off the field. But let's just I know people enjoyed a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the league for a little bit, and we haven't talked about the league much over the course of the season. Right now, who are the three best teams in the AFC?
In the AFC, well, I mean, Kansas City obviously is one of those, right? I mean,
yep, I agree.
I don't see how it can't be. Now, there are some questions about, I'm going to add on to this here in a minute after I try to answer your question. New England, I mean, you can't talk about top three teams in the AFC and not put New England in there. And after that, I might surprise you. I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens right now.
I think that's a fair pick. I'm gonna take the Chargers because the Chargers' only two losses on the season, I think, are to the Chiefs and to the Patriots. I think the Chargers are a really good team, even with all their injuries. So I'm going to take the Chargers. But you know what? I probably would have begrudgingly because you never want to give the Ravens their due. But I think after watching some of that game last weekend and seeing them rack up 11 sacks and make Mariota and the Titans offense look like a JV high school team, I gotta kind of reevaluate. And I don't know if it's the new rules or what it is, but Flacco's playing decent football.
They're not losing. They're not that offense isn't losing things for him. And I begrudgingly add him in there because I didn't think. But well, look, both Cincinnati and Baltimore are not where I thought they would be right now.
Agreed. I said I wouldn't be surprised if neither of them won 8 games. So I was wrong. I was wrong as well.
and people say we don't admit that we're wrong enough sometimes. So there you go. But here's the thing about Baltimore. Who have they played? I mean, seriously, let's go over who they played. And I know you don't want to spend much time on this, so I'll rattle through.
I like talking about this, so we got time.
All right, Buffalo. All right, and that was in week 1 with who was it? Peterman.
Yeah, Peterman, right?
Cincinnati, and they lost that game. Okay, so 1 and 2, we probably weren't thinking much of Baltimore, especially they gave up 34 points to the Bengals. We were thinking more about the Bengals than we were the Ravens at that point. Since then, they have beaten the Denver Broncos. I don't know how big of an accomplishment you think that is. Then they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know how big of an accomplishment you think that is. And then they beat the Cleveland Browns and the Tennessee Titans. Now, the thing that impresses me the most about the Ravens right now is not so much their offense, which they're not. I don't think they're turning the football over, for starters, and that'll get you a long way in the NFL if you don't do that. And B, they're playing some good defense, and we saw that against the Titans. Now, do the Titans offense just stink right now?
Doesn't scare anybody, that's for sure.
I mean, you give up 11 sacks. I mean, good Lord have mercy. I mean, that's here's the thing. We're going to learn, and we said this kind of, last week or so, we're going to learn a lot about these AFC North teams here in the next few weeks. And starting, you want to talk about a good week for us to have a bye to be able to sit back and watch some television, some games. Baltimore host the New Orleans Saints this week. So we're going to get how good is that Baltimore?
That's going to be great. And they're going to get, because the game's in Baltimore, maybe they don't get smoked. You're right. It's a great test for both teams.
All right, and then Carolina, they get Carolina on the road, and then of course they get the Steelers after that. So we're going to learn a lot about them. Now, yep. Kansas City, look, they seem to be able to score points at will. New England for the most part the same thing. I think the most questionable thing about those two teams is their defense for both those teams. We know what those two teams can do offensively. That Tyreek Hill, that kid's just amazing fun to watch. He seems like he's gotten even better. I don't know if that's possible.
But you know what it is? Right now, he's a number one receiver. We knew he was a dangerous return guy, and we always – certainly the question was, is he going to be Cordero Patterson or is he going to develop into a receiver? I mean, you saw it and you commented on it on Twitter, not only on just the straight post route that he ran for the touchdown in the game, the ball that he caught contorting in the air and then turning it and just ripping it to the flag, to the pylon. That was impressive.
He runs away from people with the ball in the air too. I mean, just literally, you see the separation with the football in the air with him. And, I mean, speed, nobody can seem to jam. We saw Artie Burns, not that it's saying much, but Artie, tried to jam him one time in that game several weeks ago off the line. And I mean, he was like he was swatting at a gnat. I mean, Hill just went right by him to the outside, and that's makes him a dangerous guy. Now, to your Chargers thing. They lost to the Chiefs to open the season, and then they lost in week 3 to the Los Angeles Rams. Other than that, who have they played, David? Who have they beaten?
So, wait, give me that again. The Chargers, they
lost. They opened the season with a loss to the Chiefs.
Yep, bad. They got smoked.
Well, 38-28. And then the Rams 2 weeks later, 35-23.
Yeah, so they played arguably the two best teams in football.
All right, and here are their wins. Buffalo, 49ers, Oakland, and the Browns.
All right, Oakland. Yeah, I mean, you can only beat the teams in front of you, right? That's the obvious answer. But and I don't know. I think that's the game that Jimmy G got hurt. Maybe it's the game Jimmy G got hurt. But yeah, so you're right. They've lost to the two best teams in football, and they haven't played anybody in the games they beat. So we don't, maybe we don't know anything about them. I think they're pretty good. Let's look at the Bengals, by the way, because if you're not picking the Steelers next, you're not taking the Dolphins. Nobody's picking the Dolphins, and nobody's picking Denver. And nobody's picking anybody out of the South. So the next team you're picking of the four we've mentioned is either the Steelers or the Bengals. let's look at the Bengals schedule. What do you got for the Bengals schedule? Because you realize, we gave them some credit and they're 4-2. Well, they're one play away from being 3-3. They made the play, obviously, but there's, and then you can argue that Miami game is a game they shouldn't have won, and one of the others is a game they should have won. So, do you have their schedule in front of you?
Yeah, and not only are they one play away from maybe being 3-3, they're one play away from back being 4-2. I mean,
yeah, right.
I mean, against the Steelers, right?
That's true. Sure, yeah.
How many times? It just goes to show one thing. I'm not a huge fan of Joey Porter, the coach, but he said something really that stuck with me. Yesterday when he was talking to the media and talking about, look, there's 2 or 3 plays during the game. If we don't make them on defense, they could be the difference in the game. And today, this is probably the direction that you're kind of going here with this talk around the league, is in today's NFL more than ever, with the way the scoring and the way the offense is, you literally are. I mean, if you make 1 or 2 extra plays on a defensive side of the ball, that could be the difference in the ball game. Not that it really wasn't beforehand, but now more than ever. Like the dropped interception by Hayden the other day. I mean, and we'll get on into this. But anyway, back to your thing about the Bengals here. And we talked a little bit about this, the last few days here, and I said, let's watch the Bengals coming out of this game against the Steelers, especially if they lose. They have Kansas City. You once again. It's a great. Not only is it a great day to be alive, David, I hope I make it to Sunday, because a lot of good games to watch. We already talked about Baltimore and New Orleans. How about the Bengals in Kansas City on that's Sunday night, right? They moved that to Sunday night. That is going to be a good game. What are we going to be talking about if Kansas City smokes the Bengals, who, by the way, the Bengals really got beat up in the game against the Steelers the other day, especially on a defensive side of the football. After the Chiefs, they get the Buccaneers, and then they get a bye, and then they get the Saints, and then the Ravens again.
Yeah, so their 2 losses are the Steelers, and who's the other loss?
Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina. So they lost to 2 pretty good football teams. I mean, I think probably we view the Steelers the same as Carolina in terms of where they are and who they are at this point. And they sneaked a couple out, and they, I think it's all up in the air for the 3 teams in the AFC North. I'm fully convinced the Chiefs and the Patriots are the 2 best teams in the conference, and I think everybody around who follows football agrees with that. And then these next 4 you can probably throw in a sifter right now. And, the Bengals beat the Ravens beat the Steelers, and the Steelers beat the Bengals. I mean, throw them in and the Chargers are going to get their chance. I mean, I was looking at the schedule, December 2nd, whatever it is, 1st or 2nd, circle that game, because that could have playoff implications with the Chargers coming to Pittsburgh. But I think we've already kind of, the wheat and the chaff in the AFC is really kind of separating itself, because, again, it's hard to think of any team in the South as being even remotely good. I mean, I don't think any of them are good. And it's really hard to who the wild card is that we haven't talked about? Maybe the wild card is the Jets. They surprised everybody last year. Maybe they're not terrible, but I think they're a better team than the Broncos, and nobody thinks the Raiders are any good, rightly so. And so we've named 4 teams, and maybe the wild card out of all that mix. If you're asking me whether it's the Jets or the Dolphins, I'd kind of take the Jets. I think the Jets actually, like last year, they're a much better team than anybody thought. I think they're a little better team than people think this year. But it's clear to me that the 6 best teams, I think we've identified 6 weeks in the 6 best teams in the AFC.
And the start of the season, I didn't think 2 teams would come out of the AFC North, but I think now it's a possibility, maybe, right? I mean,
it's definitely a possibility, and these games that the Chargers games against AFC North teams are going to be really important in that respect.
I mean, Kansas City's going to be there. We could have 2 teams come out of the West, right?
We could, yeah. No, look, like I said, I think the Chargers are really good, so that's the other team, and I don't think that who knows? Maybe I'm underestimating the Dolphins and or the Jets, but I would put the odds on. The 4 teams we mentioned above the Jets and the Dolphins.
I don't think any. I think New England's, as usual. New England's coming out of the East, and that's going to be it. The South. I mean, whoever wins it, that's going to be it. I think. Between maybe the Jaguars come out of there. You would think that the Jaguars come out of there.
We haven't even mentioned them, and I don't think they're
not that good. I mean,
their defense hasn't been that good, right?
Right. Well, not as good as last year, and that's a tall task,
Sure.
To live up to last year's defense. But whatever team comes out of there, I think that's going to be it. So then it comes down to, okay, well, where your two wild card teams come out of, and I guess it could be the West and the and the AFC North, right? So. Going to be interesting to follow the rest of the way here, but yeah, that's a fair take on all that, I think. And anything else? I mean, what do you think about all the look? There were two great games on Sunday night and Monday night, right? I mean,
you're not going to see more entertaining games. Now, again, do you want to watch football in 2018 or do you want to watch football in 1976? Because it is clearly a different game. But as we talked about a couple weeks ago. Let's be upfront and center. This is exactly what the NFL has been looking for. What you have is parity to some degree. You have teams that I was reading an article and it was a good one. I don't know who. I'm trying to remember who wrote it in the last 48 hours. But it said the margin of victory in the NFL this year is 9.6 points per game. That's the lowest it's been in 83 years, something crazy like that. So basically, obviously, the Super Bowl era plus. So games are more competitive than they've ever been. And, there was another stat that goes with that in terms of games decided by one score. There's also a higher percentage than there's ever been. That's what you want. Look, if you're a fan, and I know, Dave, we talk about this and we hear it all the time about how bad the Steelers defense is. Well, the Chiefs just put up 40 on New England. New England put up 43 on the Chiefs. And everybody else who's playing last week who's got a decent quarterback putting up, a bushel full of points every week. So, yeah, I know it looks like, the Steelers defense, in and of itself is terrible. But look at the points being scored around the NFL every week. It's just it's a point fest. I mean, it's a party every week around the NFL. If you have a good quarterback, you can take these defenses apart. And we're seeing it.
Well, I like a little bit peanut butter in my chocolate, but meaning I like defense. I like to see some defense being played. But I have to admit, I was entertained by the Sunday night game and by the Monday night game where seemingly there wasn't a lot of defense. Now, David, I know you're a very good-looking guy. You've kept yourself in very good shape over the years.
I'm also available.
Ex-soccer player. You make 50 the new 30, I think. Okay, but in the NFL, you hear Keith Butler and over the years, Dick LeBeau talk about keep them to 17, 16 points, 17 to 16 points. That's the goal.
We used to preach that all the time. We don't even sniff that line anymore.
Well, what way I'm going with this silly analogy is 21 the new 17?
It might be 23. It might be 23.
Is 23 the new 17? You talked about how much is scoring up.
Well, here, let me read. I found the article. It's on the ringer.com, and it's an article by Kevin Clark that came out yesterday at 9:11 a.m. So here are the two paragraphs that stood out to me. Okay, I just had them, and now I went up to see the author. Okay, so it says, good gosh, sorry. Give me 1 second here.
What school did you go to?
I literally went up to see. Okay, here we go. This season has been the NFL's dream. Heading into Sunday, the league was on pace for its lowest average margin. This surprised me, by the way. I would have guessed that this would have been lower. But on pace for its lowest average margin of victory, 9.96 points per game. So essentially 10 points a game in 86 years. Can you believe that the average margin of victory every year, Dave, is greater than 10? That surprised me a little bit. I would have gotten that wrong. The NFL is also on pace to set the record for the most overtime games in a season. I don't know if that's meaningful or not. And on top of that, the weekly scoring average is at an all-time high. More points and a shrinking margin of victory have led to an increase in television ratings. You remember that was all the rage to talk about last year, as the league office predicted. This spike comes after those numbers have dropped off the previous two seasons. There were too many game windows 2 years ago, but the other big problem was boring football. Being boring isn't an issue anymore. Now, who knows if it's cyclical or not, but if you protect the quarterbacks, that means quarterback play gets better. Guys are more confident to stand in the pocket and hold the ball an extra half a second, that they're not going to die. And I think that, to me, that is singularly the most important thing, the most important change that has led to football being a much more offensive game today.
All right. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing moves moving forward. But yeah, I think that's some good talk about around the league there. And before we're going to take a break here to let one of our sponsors have a quick ad here. But before we do, I want to read something that Jeff Dudash wrote as a comment in our last episode. Jeff must be a new listener to the show. He says, "Dave, I hope you will take some constructive criticism." Well, you can tell right there he's not a
You haven't blocked him yet.
you can tell right away he's a new listener, right?
Hell no.
Jeff, welcome to the show. Here he goes. Love the content, but you could really stand to take a couple of voice public speaking lessons.
That's going to go over well.
The screaming into the microphone, in particular, makes the podcast a challenge to listen to. Jeff, I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
Scream at him.
I'm 50, Jeff. I have a lot of issues.
Yeah, you're 50. I'm a man.
Yeah, I should go that way. Jeff, I'm 50. I'm a man. How great was that clip? A lot of people probably don't even know what we're talking about.
Google it, Mike Gundy. I'm 40.
I'm 40. I'm a man. Yeah, Jeff, I'm 50. I'm a man. I got many mental issues. Leave me alone. Seriously, Jeff. I mean, if you don't like the show, I'm not. I don't have time to take voice or public. I don't have time or the patience or the mental aptitude to take a couple of voice public speaking lessons. It's just the way it is, Jeff. I'm sorry. My wife just came in here to study. My wife
what the hell's going on?
Yeah, she wants to know what the heck's going on in here with me. Yeah, that's yelling, Jeff. Okay, let's take let's just stop the belly laughs here.
Now a word from our sponsors who will be leaving the show. All right, we're back at it. Should we take at least a cursory glance at the NFC? Clearly, the best team in the NFC is the Rams, with the Saints right behind them. Who else is good?
Oh wow, NFC wise, depending on what Dallas defense shows up, I mean maybe they do something wild card wise. I mean their offense is very inconsistent as well. I think Chicago's going to fade. I mean Green Bay, we've seen Aaron Rodgers pull rabbits out of his head.
We have, and I have to say, they got a tough schedule coming up, and so that was a nice win for them to get. But you know who the Eagles I think are pretty good. I don't know about the Bears and the Lions and the Panthers and the Falcons and the Seahawks. I don't know about any of those teams. I really have no idea. I think the Vikings are good, and I do think actually the Eagles are good. So, behind the Rams and the Saints, I'd take the playoff teams. I would take the Eagles and the Vikings. The rest of them, I think the parity and the level of decent football in the NFC is better, much better. The only really bad team the two bad teams in the NFC are the Giants and the Cardinals. And the Niners, I don't think they're terrible. They're just a bit unlucky, and lose your quarterback, you kind of throw them out of the mix. But the rest of that stuff, I don't know. That's a stew over there. The Steelers are going to get some of that stew. The Carolina Panthers game you pointed out earlier, it's going to be an interesting one.
Is there a chance that a 500 team makes the playoffs as a 500 or worse team makes the playoffs in the NFC this year?
I don't think there's any chance that a worse team than 500 makes it in.
7-9.
Yeah, I don't think any chance. I don't think any chance of that. Yeah, that would really surprise me. There was a great stat. I'm trying to pull it up when we talk about kind of teams that have been average. Did you see Dan Steinberg's, the writer for the Washington Post, his stat about the Redskins? Basically, it's along these lines. It's like the Redskins are 2-2. They're 1-1 in their last 2, 2-2 in their last 4, 4-4 in their last 8, 5-5 in their last 10, 6-6 in the last 12. He goes on. It's like they're 14-1 in their last 29. They're 37-1 in their last 75. I mean, it's just it's crazy funny that he went and looked this up, and the stats great. But we didn't even mention the Redskins, and they sit there actually at 3-2. Who knows what they are with Alex Smith? I don't know that I've seen, more than a quarter of Redskins football this year, to be honest.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit more than that. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that NFC shakes out. All right, one thing that we haven't touched on from that game the other day that we just ran out of time is the whole Vontaze Burfict thing, David. And I went through in a post, kind of highlighted all the things that why Burfict kind of has – why people think about Vontaze Burfict, what they do heading into that game. Now, outside of the hit on Antonio Brown, a lot of what I highlighted could be deemed, if it was anybody else, would I be highlighting it? The quarterback sneak, him flying by the head of Ben Roethlisberger.
The first play to Grimble, him coming in with an elbow to the head,
right?
Shoulder.
Right, that James Conner in the end zone, kind of getting
kicked in the head.
Yeah, kind of subtle kicking and a straddling, and then James Conner running through the middle of the line, and then Burfict coming from the side, and really not even it's almost like a Superman. He hands out to the side, but he makes contact helmet to helmet with James Conner on that one. All that kind of stuff that probably we wouldn't even bat an eye at, most of it, if it's not somebody like Vontaze Burfict. But when you take in the guy and the player that he is and the history, and then you pull all this stuff out, and especially the hit on Antonio, because quite honestly, you could compare that hit on Antonio to the one a few years ago in the NFC wildcard game, right? I mean, same kind of hit, him lowering that shoulder to the head there. What is your take on this whole Vontaze Burfict thing? And should he be fined? Should he be suspended? I mean,
I'll tell you what caught my attention, and this was from one of the athletic writers yesterday in Cincinnati, that apparently there was a Steeler beat writer in the Bengals locker room after the game, and one of the Steelers beat writers, I guess, was talking to. I don't know. I can't remember if he was talking to Dre or he was talking to another player, and Dre chirped up. And Burfict had been in the training room, and a lot of times guys will go in the training room to avoid the press after the game, and they'll stay in there as long as they need to stay. And apparently Burfict came out of the training room and, asked kind of what was going on. And he called the Pittsburgh beat writer the N-word and said, basically get the hell out of our locker room. And I'll tell you, one thing we've seen from the league is they don't have any tolerance for that. And, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't think it's particularly significant. The beat writer from Pittsburgh happened to be white. But, you start using racial slurs on reporters and that kind of thing to go with the other things that happened. I mean, we saw yesterday in the Steelers locker room when guys like Marcus Gilbert are speaking up, Ramon Foster, even Ben Roethlisberger are speaking up about the dirty nature of what was happening on the field, and then throw the racial slur at a reporter. To me, this is absolutely suspendable stuff. And even if the stuff on the field only got him a fine, Dave, I will be surprised, and I think it will be out of character if the league lets the racial slur stuff slide. Now, maybe I'm just too hopeful that the league will get this right. They've gotten more right than wrong, at least for the last year or two, after getting everything wrong for 3 years. But that, I don't know if everybody saw that story, but that was another part of this whole thing that goes into the conversation.
All right. Well, what about just the stuff on the field?
I think we're all biased because we've all been told it doesn't look like a suspension's coming. Now, will the outrage from the Steeler locker room and, Twitter and any of that, will that have any impact, or do they see things now that they maybe didn't see the first time through? I don't know. I think kind of the elbow to AB's head and that Juju, you're next stuff. I don't, you don't get a free pass. You get a free pass if you're, a first year guy or a guy with no track record. I don't think if you're a convicted felon, which he is in the NFL's eyes in terms of being suspended for actions on the field, you're a repeat offender. I think it's suspendable stuff.
Here's the thing. What does it say if they only, Ian Rappaport, I think, was the first one to come out and say they're not going to suspend him, but he could be fined. Well, what if you fine a player, you're fining him because why?
Yeah, because he did something illegal on the field.
Okay, right. Now, what do you do to someone who's a repeat offender that has that's already been suspended, who continues to do something illegal on the field?
Yeah, you can increase the, it's just like if you're on parole, it's different than if you're not on parole. If you're convicted of something, you then, you pay the consequences. You're held to a higher standard.
I would appreciate you leaving my
your checkered past out.
My checkered past out of this and quit using me as an example here. Thank you. Continue.
You suffer the consequences, and punishment is more severe for a similar action.
So, I mean, how big of a joke is it if they do issue? I mean, look, we saw poor T.J. Watt get a $20,000 fine for barely grazing the shin bone of one Matt Ryan. And then we see the Falcons linebacker only gets half that amount for throwing James Conner down to the ground after the whistle had blown. I mean, something is. We talked about this before in the past when it comes to fines. How kind of lopsided these things are. To me, it is absolutely a joke if they fine him and do not suspend him. If they don't want to issue any fine or whatever, yeah, we'll talk about that and we'll say, oh, I can't believe that he got out of that game without any punishment whatsoever. But if they don't suspend him but fine him, I think it's a huge, huge joke. One of these games, he's going to really mess somebody up. He is just a different guy. I mean, I think it's him getting vengeance first and team second. And I would have cut his butt a long time ago if I was Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, and that's what the beat writer for The Athletic was calling for in the Bengals. He said Marvin Lewis should suspend him, and that I just it's hard to see that happening. But
we should find out today, though, right?
They got to make decisions, right?
Right. I mean, so I have a feeling that you and I might be talking about what did or didn't happen on the Friday show there. So, all right, enough of the Burfict. I'm sure people want to talk a little bit about the Steelers here, but before, why don't you tell people about mybookie.ag and especially after they whooped my butt this week.
Yeah, that's the thing about MyBookie. But so the good thing is, if you're on the other side of that, you're going to get paid with MyBookie, and we've been talking about it. Dave, have you been watching it last night? Last night, if you're a sports fan, midweek, right? You think Tuesday night, you're not going to get any professional or college football. So what do you have? Well, last night you had a pretty good show going on. You had a baseball game at 5:00, which turned out not to be all that exciting as the Red Sox blew it open late. But you had a hockey game going on at 7:00 if you're in my time zone. The Penguins, and they haven't looked great to start the season as they lose an OT. You get the NBA season tipping off with an interesting matchup, maybe the two best teams in the East with the Celtics and the Sixers. You get to bet that. And then you go right into the other baseball game, which ends up going 15 innings and lasts till 5 hours and lasts till about 2:00 in the morning East Coast time. And at the same time, on your other TV, you can watch in Golden State and Oklahoma City. And that's why you got to have an account at mybookie.ag because you can just keep it rolling. Online, open 24/7. You can go for the parlays. 3-team parlay, turn $100 into $600. We've got, like I say, you got everything going on. It is a smorgasbord of choices and games and things to get out there. And remember, we've been using these guys for years. Great online reviews. You can bet fantasy and all of those things when the football season rolls around. And if you use our promo code, this is probably the last week for this. We've banged this drum a couple times. Promo code terrible. They will match your first deposit up to $1,000. So check it out. mybookie.ag. If you win, you play, you win, you get paid.
Yeah, right. And you can do the fantasy stuff, like you said, with that as well, too. And I don't know if many of our listeners, dabble in doing hockey or whatnot. I used to do basketball a long time ago, but I'm glad I didn't have the mybookie.ag app back years ago when I used to do basketball, because it would have been a bloodbath, even worse than what it is. But definitely a good company to run your bet through there. So. All right, coming out of that, you want to talk a little bit more about the game, Artie Burns, and some of the reaction to that?
Yeah, I'll just go back to another drum I've been beating for a while now is, given this more thought over the past 24 hours, I think Mike Hilton has been the Steelers' best player since the start of the best defensive player since the start of the 2017 season. Now, at the end of last year, we probably would have said Cam. You couldn't say Hayden because he missed too many games. Mike Hilton was just a really good player in the Steelers secondary. And Cam has not had a great start to 2018. Hayden's been very good, but in the collective, with the games Hayden's missed, I think you have to argue that over the last, I guess it'd be 22 games now, 22 regular season games, Mike Hilton is the Steelers' best defensive player. Would you sign up for that?
It'd be hard not to. It really would be hard not to with him. He really has played well, and I think if you wanted to go by what some of the other ranking sites out there, I think I saw Cameron Hayward probably could be in conversation for being the best player. Potentially, I don't know. John Bostic really has probably. We're not talking a lot about John Bostic, and I bet that's surprising a lot of our listeners. But he has played well against the run. Mike Hilton is definitely up there. I would say Mike Hilton is probably top 3 or top 4 as far as best players on the defensive side of the ball this year, and really just not a.
Well, yeah, I'm including 2017 as well. So I'm taking the whole, the last 22 regular season games. And I'm taking Hayden out of the mix because he missed too many for injury last year, but he's been good. Cam hasn't been as good this year. So, to me, I don't think there's another choice, honestly.
Yeah, well, then fair enough. Yeah, he would probably him and Cameron Hayward would probably be it.
Okay, so I didn't give him his due last game, but he made some big third down tackles. He was good on coverage. Yeah, look, one ball he was probably beat. If Dalton made a good throw, Tyler Boyd had beat him up the seam or down that left side. So a good throw probably gets him beat, but it wasn't a great throw, and he made the play. AJ had a drop, I think, in front of him, but he made some tackles on third down. He broke up some other plays. Good to see. And the other thing is we talked about the safeties not really being involved. They weren't involved. They didn't get beat deep. And they obviously were worried a bit about AJ. The Bengals were able to move the ball on those 2 end of half drives, and that was problematic. But the Steelers defense at least appears to be improving, having just played a good run of quarterbacks, which they didn't do at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. A good run of quarterback play, at least. You can debate whether Flacco's good or not. But Matt Ryan had been good and wasn't good against the Steelers, and Dalton had been good and wasn't particularly good against the Steelers. So I think you have to give the Steelers defense some credit for that.
Yeah, but we'll see. This is I'm going to be interested to watch the second half after this team. As we say, when they get into the bye week here, we're going to see how well the Steelers can self-scout themselves. Alex Kozora had a good post up about the things of bugaboo that the Steelers have had defensively. Not that there's just one, but going back the last few seasons here is how the Steelers react and play against empty sets and all like that. Great post on that, of the breakdowns and how he needs to break some tendencies here with what they do with coverage and aspects of that, because it's too easy for these opposing offenses to get a a great matchup at times, say with the Vince Williams and all like that. Now, it might be just what it is what it is until you can get a more athletic guy on the field, But either that or you're going to have to play some, maybe some more zone or break or not tip your hands so quickly. One thing that I don't like what the Steelers do is they do seem to tip their hand and have way too time on some coverages and all. It's too easy for opposing quarterbacks. Now, look, they're going to get you to tip your hand with some motions and stuff like that, obviously. But on other things, and one of the things that really impresses me and has for a while when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens defense is how well they're able to disguise their coverages here. So we're going to get to see how this team reacts during the bye week as far as their self-scouting goes, and when they come out on the other side here, and when they play teams that, they're going to play some teams that they've already played before, so those teams have obviously had a chance to scout them, not only the first third of the season there, but already playing them as well too. We're going to be able to see how good this Steelers defense can potentially turn things around here. You get Cleveland, you get Baltimore, two teams that you've already played before. You get a team like the Carolina Panthers and then the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then really, what you kind of hinted at, earlier in the show. You get the next team that you get with some really good receivers is probably going to be Denver and then maybe the Chargers, right? I mean, Denver with, help me out here. Manny and, I'm drawing a blank, who number 88 is over there, star receiver for Denver. Oh,
Manny Sanders.
No, Manny. Thomas.
Demaryius Thomas.
Right, over there. And then, obviously you get the Chargers and what they're doing over there. That's probably going to be the next two teams, outside of the Ravens. And when we didn't think much of the Ravens receiving core going into that first meeting, we have a lot more respect for that Ravens receiving core now after playing them and seeing what they did to the Steelers that first time around there. But I think the biggest thing, and this is the thing that seems to be the hot topic going into the bye week, is Artie Burns. I mean, what are you going – I mean, obviously Joe Hayden is going to be on one side of your defense there. What in the heck are you going to do on the other side coming out of the bye? Because Artie has – and to hear his most recent interview from yesterday, it sounds like his dog – he lost a dog. I mean –
I guess, Steeler fans want to know that the players take it hard. There's no doubt that, Artie takes it hard. So, I'm sure not too many Steeler fans are feeling particularly empathetic for Artie. But when guys don't seem to care, people get pissed off. So understand, and, this is our job is to critique players, but it's the player, not the guy, not the person, right? So you're critiquing the play. And, Artie cares. So, you can be empathetic to that and feel bad about it. But I am absolutely benching him. I mean, it's just the last drive convinced me because we've talked about it. He had good coverage on Erickson on the sideline. Just turn your head around and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to grab the guy. Just get your head around and you're good. And then on the touchdown, you can't be backpedaling when you start 2 yards back in the end zone and you got coverage on the outside. He played inside leverage. And that was the wrong thing to do. But if he's going to play that, he's got to be up there playing almost bump and run. They're running from whatever they ran from, the 3 yard line. Now you can't be backpedaling. You can't play 5 yards off and backpedal. I mean, I'm not going to be as ridiculous to say that I run that route and score a touchdown, but every damn receiver in the NFL runs that route and scores a touchdown. That can't happen.
Yeah, and he said he was expecting the post, and Boyd said, the way he was playing me, I knew how I had that route the whole time.
Or the ball was snapped. They knew it was a touchdown.
That was an easy pitch and catch there. Look, I mean, the options behind him aren't great right now. I mean, Cody Sensabaugh, Cameron Sutton's not been great. Of course, he hasn't been asked, I don't think, to play a lot outside. Do you maybe take your chances let's see what Cameron Sutton hadn't been great inside. Do we take our chances to maybe see how he plays, on the outside? Do you let Cody Sin? Do you just continue to rotate these guys and let them get picked on in order as they come in with the things they do good? Do you maybe, when you put Artie in there, do you remember the main thing Kevin Colbert said about Artie Burns after he was drafted, the main thing that kept running out of Kevin Colbert's mouth is, well, he can play bump and run. 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 Well, that's he hasn't learned to be able to do much anything more than that. And right now, even his bump and run, he's not showing great technique or great confidence in any of that. He I don't want to keep going back and harping about him being the selection, because if it wasn't going to be him, who knows how this thing would have turned out if William Jackson's not drafted by the Bengals. Maybe William Jackson is the guy that's in Pittsburgh, and Lord, how would that have turned out maybe for the better there. But they maybe they get caught up, or no, maybe to it. I think sometimes they get too caught up in these P-Spark scores and the character of these guys, as opposed to how these guys can play football. And there was not a lot of great tape on Artie Burns coming out of Miami, and especially him being a underclassman at the time and not doing a lot of stuff during the off season when it comes to football stuff. You kind of have what you asked for right now, in my opinion. And Bradley come out and said in an interview yesterday, well, more unlucky, blah blah blah. I think that's a line of BS.
More what?
Bradley asking about Artie Burns and say, yeah, his confidence down, technique, blah blah blah. He wants to say that Artie's been a lot more unlucky.
Yeah, that's Tom's not one to criticize people in the media. I know him; he's a friend of mine. People know this, and so I would take that with a grain of salt. There's, you're not unlucky as often as Artie is in the NFL. It's not like he tipped the ball and the guy caught it and ran for a touchdown. He's just getting his ass beat.
It's just bad technique and bad,
So let me ask you one question here. This is, so obviously the Steelers at the end of the year are going to have to pick up the fifth-year option, and there's not a chance in hell they pick up that option if things stay the way they are. Is there any kind of leeway here for Artie Burns because of the fact that he doesn't turn 24 until May 1st? And he's, what is that? That's, 8 months from now. He's 23. He's in his third year in the league. He is a young guy. So no doubt he's a young guy. But, man, if you're not learning it now, you've been a starter for a year and a half. It looks like he's regressed. Do you give him some slack for that?
Well, I mean, I don't think you need to sit him down. You need to sit him down for at least a game or two, I think. You need to try to rebuild him however you think you can rebuild him, and you definitely need to play to his strengths or whatnot. Now, obviously, you can't lock yourself up to just playing man to man with him all the time. But you need to try to rebuild him. I mean, look what happened to Ike Taylor. I mean, would any of us thought, not that Ike Taylor was ever gonna, nobody's ever gonna claim that Ike should have went to a Pro Bowl maybe or been an All-Pro or whatnot. But we need to find out what his intestinal fortitude is. I think you need to make him kind of fight. Look, everything he's had up until now is because he's because he's a former first-round draft pick, right? I mean, you're not just going to sit a guy down up until this point because you have a lot invested in him. But now's the time now where the tape talks too loud. So you've got to sit him down now, and you can't just rotate him in. And all he needs to be sat down. He needs to play special teams for a game or two only come off the bench in case of injury or that kind of stuff. And you need to see if this kid can get past it, because it's going to take a lot of him mentally. Does his tape studies suck? Those are things we can't answer. Joe Hayden needs to get in there and work with this kid, and he probably already is. He needs to live in that facility and look at all the things. Look at how bad he needs to do some self-scouting here during this bye week as well. We better not see him show up at no Miami game during the bye, right? I mean, stay in Pittsburgh and get it working.
Well, honestly, who knows? Maybe the best thing for him is get away for 3 days. Honestly, I don't know that grinding through tape right now. Maybe he needs to. I don't know the answer. I'm just saying that maybe he does need to clear his head.
Well, I tell you what, the further I get away from my work, the worse I get, and I'm bad as it is. I don't think, he needs to grind on this. I think they do need to bench him, though, whatever. I mean, look, you have Cleveland. What's Jarvis Landry going to do to him? Do you at this point now, do you just let Joe Hayden follow everybody around?
Maybe. I mean, the thing about Jarvis Landry is you're going to be playing in the slot a lot. So how much do you want to screw up your – yeah, and that brings up a larger question. We'll finish with Artie. So the answer is I'd bench him. I think we're both on the same page here. He's got to sit down for a little bit. And, Cody Sensabaugh has been a snitch better than I thought he would be. He's not great. Cam Sutton, probably the bye week is a chance for Cam Sutton maybe to assert himself and get bigger opportunity. So, we can think about that. And
I'd like to, quite honestly, I'd like to see Cam Sutton try to sink or swim on the outside. I'd kind of like to exit this season wanting to know a little bit more about what Cameron Sutton can do on the outside. I mean, he's not an elite athlete, but neither was. I mean, William Gay survived a long time in this league because of his smarts, right? And of course, a lot of that time was played inside there. But I mean, you got a quality guy in Mike Hilton inside. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens when Morgan Burnett gets back on the field. What kind of role I mean, we've seen Sutton play a lot in the sub package and stuff like that. We saw him make some good plays during preseason of his rookie season when playing outside. Maybe you rotate Sensabaugh and Sutton for a game or two here.
Yeah, I think that is the likely scenario. So let's talk about a couple of these things. The Steelers are going to come out of this. They're going to come out of this bye relatively healthy. So they might have a full 53. So a lot of things have been spoken about, Dave, and we've both gotten a lot of questions on Twitter as the linebacker and Eli Rogers are both on the PUP and IR, and what do you do with them?
Nothing.
Well, Eli Rogers, clearly nothing. I mean, he doesn't really have a role with Ryan Switzer playing and Justin Hunter getting some snaps late in that game because he was dressed. James Washington, obviously, it's a chance for him to step up here in these 10 days because no doubt about it, number 3 pick, he has been – I won't say massively disappointing because I didn't have huge expectations for him, but clearly disappointing for James Washington the first, into the bye week.
Yeah, but I want to hit on that too. Disappointing just because of maybe the stat column.
Well, I mean that's production, right? So you paid him to be productive receiver.
Well, but he hasn't been targeted all that much either. And I went back and I looked through every play that he was on the field for during the game against the Bengals. I think it was 14 or 16 in total. 2 of them were running plays. He's not being asked to do a lot, David. I mean, he's asked.
Well, right, and that's a chicken and the egg, right? Does Ben not trust him to, so he's not looking for him even when he is open, or something else?
Right.
And we don't know the answer to that.
Right, we don't know the answer to that. And let's face it, Ben has a lot of options, right? I mean, right now, AB, Juju.
The tight ends, man. The tight ends
are both the tight ends, and if not, then.
3, don't forget my man Xavier.
Yeah, Xavier Grimble. You got all 3 tight ends. You got the back coming out of the backfield, and Connor. That's an option as well too. So really, James has really been asked to be okay. You're Coke bottle top. I want you to go deep. He's either been asked to run these goes in obvious passing situations. He's been asked to run these goes predominantly from the right outside wide receiver spot, or he's been asked to run these 7 or 12 yard curls from either right, from a kind of a wide slot position or from a wide outside wide spot. He hasn't been asked to run a lot. He ran one against the Bengals, an underneath a shallow cross, and he was open for that. And he was one kind of over route on kind of a skinny post, if you will, 7 and on up and second level kind of thing. That was it against the Bengals. If you're not on the field and running out now, I don't know what it means. I can take a good guess, but He wasn't on the field for that final scoring drive, for that 2-minute drive.
That speak volumes, really.
Justin Hunter was on the field for that, and at the end of the previous drive when they got in the red zone, it was Justin Hunter on the field. So read into that what you will. Now, he is a rookie, and you can say, well, look at what Juju got on the field quickly, but Juju was a little bit of a different player. We knew Juju was could be more of a slot outside guy. So, in all fairness,
and a very functional blocker right out of the chute.
Correct. James Washington, the only way James kind of compares to Juju is he can stretch the field deep, and he's a combative catcher. But we did not see Washington do some things in his college tape, really from the slot, that we were able to see Juju be able to do on his college tape. So technically, Juju, I guess you could say, was the better, more rounded player coming out of college. Now, go back to Vontaze Burfict in his rookie season. Not that we should be comparing that far, but Vontaze did not have his first catch until 7 or 8 games into the season. At least Washington has that. It's going to be. We're going to learn. And look, there are people are saying, well, James Washington can't get off the line against press coverage. That's BS. I mean, I put a clip up there on the left side from the Bengals game of him getting off against William Jackson. To me, we have incomplete data on James Washington right now during his career as a Steeler. I think it is okay to say, well, should he have more than 5 catches for 40 whatever yards right now? I thought he would have more than that. I got to be honest with you. And hey, let's not forget about your boy Switzer too. I mean, you have a lot of things have changed since Washington was drafted on top of it, because you're going to get Switzer if you're behind. You're going to get Switzer on the field in some of these situations. We saw that a couple of games ago. Ideally, David, how many snaps is James Washington going to get if the offense is clicking and the Steelers are scoring points? How many ideally snaps are you going to get James Washington on the field for?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 15 to 20 is ideal. If Justin Hunter's taking him away and Switzer's taking him, look, he should be out there on every 4 wide receiver set. You would think he'd be out there. So that's 10. And then you'd think he'd get 5 to 10 others. So, that's what you're banking on. And, in that scenario, you'd like to get 3 targets a game, 2 or 3 targets a game. I mean, you look at historically, what was Eli Rogers getting? What was, the 4th wide receiver in the system? What do they get? What does a tight end get? So, the second half of the season, I think the goal here for the last, 10 games of the season would be for James Washington to get, 20 to 25 catches the rest of the way and be on the field for, up to 20 snaps a game. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think that's kind of what our expectation or hope should be for the balance of the season.
Yeah, I'm lowering my expectations now. I thought he had a chance to maybe catch 40, 50.
Yeah, I think we both said 40, 50 balls, right?
But now I think now,
right?
I think he's lucky now to get 3 targets a game. Okay, I think that's high.
That's 30. That's 30 and 20 catches. So 25 catches on the season.
Yeah, he's gonna probably be. What he needs to do is he needs to maximize. Obviously, he needs to maximize his opportunities. It would be nice right out of the chute against Cleveland. Maybe try to go up top. Maybe he's the type guy that you need to get going early. Maybe a quick wide receiver screen to him or a quick slant. Maybe line him up in the slot, something that you're not going to do a lot of in this first game back against Cleveland, and get him a quick 2-yard slant, or something he did a lot of, those kind of 7 and 12-yard outs. Okay, he caught a lot of them along the sideline there. I think maybe you try to get the football in his hand real quick against Cleveland there, and then go from there. I'd like to see him, and Ben obviously has to play a role in this as well too. Get him in a one-on-one situation up over the top and see if you can't hit him on a long one, okay? I think once we get one long one kind of quote-unquote Martavis Bryant-like play in his back pocket, I think maybe things might change a little bit with him. I don't think Ben has a lot of confidence in him right now, and that's understandable maybe, and maybe that has to do with more practice than anything else. But he's not being asked to do a lot during games right now, and you can't fault him, and you can't look at him and say, well, we're disappointed in him for that. I think we're going to learn a lot more about him in the next 3 or 4 games after the bye, though. So I just want to make sure we hit on that aspect of where James Washington is right now.
Okay, so we're not bringing the linebacker off the IR. Help me out here.
Ola Adeniyi. Look, people get on me on Twitter and say, man, you're never in favor of doing nothing. It's because I'm 50. But look, the thing with Adeniyi, I think there's something there with him. Absolutely, I do think there's something with him. But let's remember, we hear Mike Tomlin talk about the train leaving the station and how hard it is for these guys to get themselves integrated back into things after they've missed some time. He is eligible to start practicing, but is there really a reason yet to bring him back? Now, yes, they only have 3 healthy or 3 really outside linebackers on their roster, but remember that you can do some kind of unique things with Matthew Thomas should the need present itself there on the outside. Not that you hope to get in that situation. Additionally, on the practice squad, you have who do you have? You have Keon Adams.
Keon Adams.
And you have Farrington Huguenin, right? I mean, if you got in a pinch right now because of an injury, who are you pulling up to the 53?
Oh, no doubt the guy in the practice squad has practiced for 7 weeks, and Keon Adams would go first for sure.
Either Keon Adams or Farrington Huguenin, right?
Yeah.
So why, even if, and here's the other thing, David, you've been to practices before, right?
Sure.
In season practices, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about middle of the season. During the middle of the season, during a Steelers practice, how many reps does a number 3 or number 4 outside linebacker get?
Yeah, well, you get them on. You run scout team, or you're not running with the first team defense. You're just not going to do it. You're just not enough reps to go around. So you run on the scout team, or those
guys don't. What I'm getting, those guys don't get a lot of work. Period. Right.
Right. They're not standing around because they're only, they're 60 guys. And so on each plate, 22 guys are out there. But it's just, there's not enough time. The rules have changed. So they don't get a ton of work. And that's right. And which leads to my next question is, Mike emphasizes this week in particular, A, to rest guys and get healthy, and B, to give the reps. This week is the week that, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week when they practiced, whenever they did practice, whatever it is. I think they're off tomorrow until Monday. But this week, these guys do get the reps. I mean, Ben won't take reps, I'm sure these couple days. It's a chance for these other guys. Dave, is there any scenario in your mind where Mason Rudolph supplants Josh Dobbs as the number 2? Or was that kind of set in stone? This, goes back to what Alex and I were talking in the offseason about getting the reps. And Alex was worried about Rudolph's development being stunted if he didn't get to the number 2 because he wouldn't get reps. In your mind, is it a done deal that Josh Dobbs will be the quarterback who dresses as the backup all season? Or is there – we're obviously not at practice, and Mike won't even talk about stuff like that, even if asked. So we don't have any insight here. But if we're both just guessing, is it going to stay the way it is?
That's a great question, and this is the week. And Randy Fietner talked about that last week. Says this is the week that the Dennis Dixons, that he's going way out back there. I'm surprised he didn't name Omar Jacobs in there or whatnot. But this is the time that the Joshua Dobbs and the Landry Joneses and the Dennis Dixons get their most work of the season here. I tell you what, it would be a great sign if they did come out and Mason Rudolph all of a sudden was the backup against the Browns. I mean, I think that's best case scenario. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't think it's going to
happen. It's not going to happen because they're going to give Dobbs the reps and he's going to get his chance. So, yeah, this is the way it goes, and just the way it goes. So that's the bye week, and those are probably the most interesting topics about what's actually going to happen, on the field in the bye week, and we'll see. And the Steelers now will take time off, and when we come back on Friday, we'll talk some more about what's going on around the league and get into that. And we just did a whole podcast and didn't mention L. Bell.
Yeah, L. Bell. I don't know what to think. I mean, I really don't know what to think about him. We have one listener sent us an email, said we're not going to see him till right ahead of the right ahead of the final cutoff, and that might be the case. I'm done guessing on everything with Le'Veon Bell, and I think the team is too. And I think quite honestly, I don't think this was reverse psychology on the part of Ben Roethlisberger.
No, I don't. They're not thinking about it.
On Ben Roethlisberger during his radio show, I really think this team has bought into James Conner now. And I think that they think that he can do pretty much everything that Le'Veon Bell can, and that he's got his hand in the pile for all team. And I really don't think any of them are spending any time during the day wondering when Le'Veon Bell is going to show up or worrying about texting him or what. I don't think they care at this point.
I agree.
And that's a good problem to have. We went into this season wondering who James Conner and who Jalen Samuels are. We talked about they have to figure out, even when Le'Veon Bell shows up this year, who they have in these two guys. Well, we obviously don't know anything more about Jalen Samuels, and that's not surprising. We know a little bit about Stephen Ridley, a little bit more than what we knew maybe in preseason. We're going to find out a little bit more about Stephen Ridley as the season goes on. But we sure as hell have learned a whole hell of a lot about James Conner, and it's all good. It really is. And he's turned out to be quite a bit of better player than I thought he would be.
Yeah, look, he's better than I. Look, I thought he was a little bit of a reach in the third round, but he's been excellent. We knew it wasn't going to be an effort question, and I know it wasn't going to be a toughness question. As we talked about the guy playing defensive end in the bowl game up in Michigan in his freshman year with the Panthers. I mean, he's a good athlete. The question was, and he lost some weight, was he going to be quick enough? I don't really think it was a durability question, but he's had injuries, so can he stay healthy? And this is just 6 games. But, yeah, so far, James Conner on the season, A grade, no doubt.
All right, we'll get into the rest of it. We'll talk a little bit more on Friday. Maybe you think it's a good time maybe to have Chris Hoke back on and maybe talk about how much practice time these defensive players get. I don't know. We'll figure something out for Friday for sure. We'll of course have our picks, and who knows? We'll maybe announce a new sponsor during that show as well too. And we'll go ahead and give them a little bit of a shout out here. It's Robinhood, the online investing application there. I use it. I think David Todd, you've used it as well too. We're fixing to get on a call actually with Robinhood and their advertising reps here in a little bit to go over some stuff with them. So a little bit of heads up. You'll probably start hearing us talking a little bit more about Robinhood and their platform moving forward as well too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. If you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to the site and hit ad-free. Up top for $25, you can have access to the site for a calendar year ad-free. And we'll be back on Friday.
As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.